Everybody knows the modern depictions of Santa Claus, the red suit, the cheery disposition, and of course the gift-giving. But the origins of this beloved figure actually come from many different sources. Around the 2nd century in the Roman Empire, more specifically in the town of Myra, now in present-day southern Turkey, there was a man named Saint Nicholas of Myra. Little is actually known of the life of Saint Nicholas, as all of his writings were lost to time. This is not too surprising, as the papyrus he would have used was more fragile than contemporary paper. Furthermore, Saint Nicholas lived in a very tumultuous time in the Roman Empire. What we do know about Nicholas's life is that he was very generous to the poor. One story in particular says that he presented 3 destitute daughters with dowries so they wouldn't have to go into prostitution. One of the earliest mentionings of Saint Nicholas was less than 200 years after his death. At that point, Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius II, who ruled from 401 to 450 AD, ordered the building of the St. Nicholas Church, which was still in use until it was finally abandoned in 1923. During the Middle Ages, on the evenings of December 6th, it was very popular to give gifts to children in his honor. As the Reformation of the Church was taking place, Martin Luther advocated for the date to be changed to December 25th, as to shift focus from celebrating the saints to celebrating Jesus. Another way Martin Luther shifted focus to Jesus was to get rid of St. Nicholas altogether, and replace him with Christ-kind as the gift-bearer. These ideas that Martin Luther had ultimately failed in his lifetime, and St. Nicholas and the date of December 6th remained popular. As the 16th century was ending in England, the feast day of St. Nicholas, as it was called, began to wane in popularity, and Father Christmas began to take his place. In this time he was described as a large man in green or scarlet robes lined with fur. He was also described as the embodiment of good cheer, bringer of joy, peace, revelry, and good food and wine. The date was also changed to December 25th as to coincide with Christmas Day. In America in the 1700s, the folklore of St. Nicholas and Father Christmas merged to create the mythical character of Sinterklaas in Dutch. It was then anglicized to Santa Claus. Another modern idea was introduced on the 23rd of December, 1823, when an anonymous person published a visit from St. Nicholas, better known today as the night before Christmas. In the story, the reindeer pulling Santa's sleigh are named for the first time. One interesting note, in the original publication, Donner and Blitzen are actually named Dunder and Bliksem, the Dutch words for thunder and lightning, and were changed to sound more German. In 1845, the name Kris Kringle became synonymous with Santa Claus. In the midst of the American Civil War, Thomas Nast, a cartoonist, was creating many of the traits that would be associated with Santa Claus. His rotund figure, the fact that he lives at the North Pole, and his red suit all come from Nast. The idea of Santa having a wife was not conceived until the late 19th century, with publications such as the very famous Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus in 1897. As the 20th century began, much of the mythos surrounding Santa was around, but not firmly established, leaving some authors to write that Santa had in fact 10 reindeer and that they could not fly but leap in enormous bounds. Beginning in the 1930s, the Coca-Cola Company began to produce Christmas-themed advertisements with Santa as a focus, thus finally cementing the modern image of Santa Claus. These are just a few facts that I came across while researching this topic, and thought they were kind of interesting, but couldn't find the right place for them. There is actually a Santa school. It was established in 1937 by Charles W. Howard, who played Santa in parades and department stores. In the United States and Canada, children typically leave out milk and cookies for Santa, but in Norway and Sweden, it is customary to leave out rice porridge with cinnamon and sugar. In 1955, a Sears and Roebuck ad in Colorado gave children a Santa hotline number to call. The number was accidentally misprinted, leading children to actually call the Continental Air Defense Command on Christmas Eve. The man in charge that night was Colonel Harry Shoup. He responded to the calls saying that he could see Santa on the radar heading south from the North Pole. 3 years later, in 1958, NORAD Tracks Santa began and can still be called today or tracked via the internet. Well, that's more or less the history and interesting tidbits about Santa Claus. I wanted to do a kind of part 2 to my first video because I thought Santa Claus deserved a video all his own. Thank you all for watching, and Merry Christmas.